Is China replicating our best STEM schools? The CCP is targeting Canadian activism for the Uyghurs and Tibetans, and Beijing's neighbors are arming up. Then more on this week's China News headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell, and this episode is sponsored by Saily. Tired of wonky data service when you travel? Check out Saily. It's an affordable way to stay connected whenever you go overseas. I'll explain more at the end. China is planning to issue a record $3 trillion yuan in special treasury bonds. This money will be used to fund subsidies and investments in the high-tech sector because they need more resources for theft of intellectual property. Research and development. The idea is to boost China's flagging economy. The CCP says boosting consumption is a priority, but they're also raising the target budget deficit to an all-time high of 4% of GDP. Because when you're in a financial hole, the best way to dig your way out is with even more debt and spending. Researchers at Goldman Sachs wrote that these stimulus efforts could help offset the impact of expected U.S. tariffs on Chinese exports. But overall growth for next year in China is still forecasted to be slower than the CCP would like. Thankfully, the growth they report will magically be better than all the forecasts and actual metrics from everyone else. Don't look into it, though. It's magic. The Chinese Communist Party is taking steps against certain Canadian institutions and individuals for their pro-Uyghur and pro-Tibetan activism, because of course it is. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, the measures the CCP took include asset freezes and bans on entry, and the targets include Canada's Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project and the Canada-Tibet Committee. In particular, the CCP said it will be freezing property belonging to both institutions within Chinese territory. I wonder if these people and groups actually have any assets in China, or if the CCP is just blowing smoke. But in addition to freezing assets, the CCP also banned the targeted individuals from entering Macau, Hong Kong, and mainland China, because these refugees and activists just have so much property and interest in going to China. The CCP's territorial ambitions in the South China Sea are being challenged by new missile and military aid packages for its neighbors, Vietnam and the Philippines. And the CCP is not happy. The two countries are nearing a $700 million deal to acquire BrahMos missiles, which were jointly developed between Russia and India. I guess BRICS is working out just perfectly for China, right? The BrahMos missiles are supersonic, making them difficult to intercept, and can also be launched from the air, land, or sea. The Philippines already acquired its first batch of these missiles earlier this year, calling them a significant game changer. The Philippines are also trying to purchase the U.S. Army's mid-range capability missile, also known as the MRC Typhoon, which is incredibly mobile and can target enemies on land and at sea. Since April, one of these systems has already been stationed on the island of Luzon, with both the U.S. and the Philippines emphasizing that this is just for training purposes. Of course, China condemned it anyway, because they would never use training exercises as a way to intimidate their neighbors. Remember, every China accusation is actually a confession. They're especially upset because the Typhoon, using Tomahawk missiles, can hit much of China's eastern seaboard, as well as its militarized islands in the South China Sea. Beijing has called these developments disturbing and an escalation, because again, the CCP is the victim here. But Vietnam and the Philippines aren't alone in getting some juicy military supplies from Santa. Taiwan just received a new military aid package from the U.S. President Joe Biden, yes, he's still president, last Saturday authorized up to $571 million worth of material and services to Taiwan, which also includes military training and education. Then, in a separate move, the Department of Defense said that $295 million in military sales had been approved. This comes after many previous large arms sales to Taiwan earlier this year. China has declared that the U.S. is playing with fire for helping arm Taiwan, and it will undermine peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. China's peaceful military takeover of Taiwan. How dare the U.S.? And after the break, China is buying off America's top STEM schools. Welcome back. The CCP has cloned America's leading STEM high school, and it appears it got some help from U.S. educators. The school is Thomas Jefferson High School in Fairfax County, Virginia, just outside D.C. It's one of the best in the U.S. for science, engineering, math, and technology. So the Chinese Communist Party is cloning it in China. According to Parents Defending Education, or PDE, Thomas Jefferson High School gave permission to China-affiliated organizations to create schools in China using the school's name and likeness, along with its curriculum and syllabi. And honestly, the most surprising part of this story is that they asked for permission instead of just stealing it. Now, by pure coincidence, Fairfax County Public Schools Thomas Jefferson Partnership Fund has received over $1 million worth of donations from Chinese interests since 2014. Fancy that! So, besides science, engineering, math, and technology, they're also one of the best schools in the U.S. for business, specifically the shady kind that won't end well. But wait, there's more. PDE commissioned a report called Little Red Classrooms. It showed the Confucius Institute quote-unquote Chinese cultural promotion programs at U.S. universities gave funding to K-12 schools across the country. For example, in Texas, the Confucius Institute at the University of Texas at Dallas gave Highland Park Independent School District a $20,000 grant in 2020 for the operation and supplies of the Chinese courses. The funds were also to be used by a district staff member to travel to China for educational purposes, aka propaganda. There are many other examples, but get this, a lot of these schools were located in the vicinity of U.S. military bases. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, just like how farmland bought by China is near U.S. military bases. Yeah, just a bunch of carefully coordinated coincidences. Nearly all of the Confucius Institutes in the U.S. have been closed since 2018, when Congress restricted federal funding to schools that had them. But with this kind of thing still happening, it seems like maybe more might need to be done. PDE has gone to the federal government about the issue, so once again, the CCP is trying to circumvent new federal restrictions on its influence to gain access to American youth, including through influential donor groups. Because apparently TikTok wasn't enough. China has abruptly changed the army general overseeing political loyalty for its ground forces. The new commissar, General Chen Hui. Chen is replacing Qin Shutong, who stepped down for unknown reasons. Because nothing creates political loyalty like force and fear. Yep, historically that's never come back to bite anyone. Chen previously served in the Air Force and was even named as the political commissar for the new aerospace force of the PLA. But after less than a year, he's been moved to overseeing ground forces, even though he has zero experience. But hey, who needs experience when you have the most important physical characteristic Xi is looking for, specifically a brown nose? Qin and also the ground forces commander Li Qiaoming were not seen at Chen's promotion ceremony, which only makes the whole thing seem even more fishy. Political and military experts are urging the U.S. to use a logistics pact with Taiwan to counter the CCP. A new U.S. government report has noted the way the CCP's planes and military drills are slowly inching closer and closer to Taiwan. Essentially, they're playing the high-stakes version of I'm not touching you to see how much they can get away with. In response, the U.S. has boosted military aid to Taiwan, like I mentioned earlier. Yet some experts say it's not enough. They're urging the White House to deter China using the ACSA, which stands for the U.S.-Taiwan Acquisition and Cross-Servicing Agreement. The agreement is rarely discussed, but it allows the DoD to exchange supplies, services, and logistical support with its partners and allies. And it would also mean the U.S. could refuel its warplanes on the island. Trey Meeks, a senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security and a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, said that low-cost strategies like this would boost Taiwan's morale and demonstrate U.S. resolve, which could help counter China's new normal of constant and escalated military coercion. He also suggested that a visiting U.S. Coast Guard ship in the region could make a stop at the island, which would also signal that larger and more powerful U.S. ships might follow up. But, I'm sure a few more high-level random purges in China's military will make them quite the fighting force, so USA, beware. And this episode is sponsored by Saily. Before COVID, I traveled a lot for China Uncensored. Taiwan, Hong Kong, Australia, the Philippines, even both Koreas. Every time I went overseas, getting data service on my mobile phone was a serious problem. I'd have to find a store that sold SIM cards, pay some ridiculous fee, and pray I didn't lose my old SIM card while traveling. Or I could try to connect to Wi-Fi, but I could only get that while in my hotel or with some potentially dangerous public Wi-Fi that puts me at risk of being hacked. But now, there's a much better solution. Saily. It's an eSIM service, which is like a regular SIM card, only better. Saily keeps you connected to the internet all the time, pretty much no matter where you are in the world. Here's how it works. You download the app for iPhone or Android. You only have to do this once. Then before each trip, choose a plan that works for you. You can choose a region or a specific country, like Taiwan, which is a country, and then selects a data plan that lets you stay connected to the internet there for your entire trip. It's that easy. And if you run into any hurdles, Saily has great customer support that's staffed 24/7 by actual human beings who will help you. Saily works with pretty much every iPhone or Android made in 2020 or later. And Saily has a special discount for China Uncensored viewers. Get an exclusive 15% discount on Saily eSIM data plans. Download the Saily app and use the code Uncensored at checkout. You can scan the code on screen right now and get started today. The link is also in the description. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.